Hello and welcome to Sam Not So Wise. My name is Sam. We have entered the month of June, so therefore it is time to do the normal thing that I do and a lot of booktubers do, and that is wrap up the previous month, that being May this time. Now I'm back to only having read 3 books in the month of May this time, and that is due to 2 reasons. One is I was quite busy. I always feel like, oh, life will get a bit less busy soon, right? But it never bloody does. So May was pretty busy, and therefore I couldn't read as much as I wanted to, but also one of them was 1,000 pages long. So that's basically 2 or 3 books, depending on who you talk to. So therefore, yes, I only have 3 books to talk about today, but these books were all quite different from each other with varying enjoyment on my part. Not really any new all-timers or greats or best of the year or anything like that, but some good reads that I want to share with you good people. So I'll just give you a quick-ish wrap-up. I can never do anything that quickly of each of those 3 books and tell you about what I'm going to read in June next month, or this month, I guess, seeing as I'm recording on the day of release. So with that and much further ado, let's talk about what I read in May. So the first book I read in May was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Now this was actually a reread for me, as I read it a couple of years ago, but my book club that I run here in Reykjavik chose it, so I needed to reread it to be fresh for that meeting, which was a wonderful meeting as always. I bloody love my book club. So the first time I read it those couple of years ago, my feelings were that it was okay, but unmemorable. And having read it again, that is basically still how I feel. Nothing has really changed, and none of my friends in the book club really changed my opinion on that either. Most of them felt similarly to me. Definitely nobody absolutely loved it and nobody hated it. Now, this book has been quite famous for a long time, and that has been increasing since it has had a TV adaptation, which I haven't watched and won't be watching. I'm just not that bothered, and I don't really watch much TV anyway, so I need to be picky when I watch stuff. Anyway, the book, if you haven't read it, then this story focuses on this scientific theory that every action we take causes a new universe to be created, where a different choice was made, basically leading up to infinite universes where everything that can happen does happen. This is a real kind of theory that is posited by astrophysicists. A little bit too complicated for me to describe in any real detail, but it's a really cool concept, and also this book doesn't really explain it in any detail either. It's not really exploring the science behind it deeply. It just kind of uses it as a basis for this sci-fi thriller novel type story that this book is. Now, the plot is based on the fact that our main character is abducted and he is sent to one of these worlds. He is called Jason, and he is sent to one of these branching worlds that is similar to ours, but not quite the same. So he spends some time trying to figure out what the hell is going on, why everything's different, but kind of similar, and trying to make his way back to his original world and the family that he has there, because this family doesn't exist in his new world, or things are different, and he just wants to go back to normal. So we traverse many worlds, many worlds, some that are wildly different to his, be it kind of apocalyptic style, more technologically advanced, or just eerily similar but not quite right. So Jason also eventually meets alternative versions of himself in these worlds, and what results is somewhat a fast-paced techno thriller, and that's as far as I'll go without any spoilers. Now, this book is okay for me. I know a lot of people love this, especially if you're into kind of thriller type writing. That's not really my bag, so it wasn't really for me. It is quite fun, and it's short, and it can act as a wonderful palate cleanser between bigger, heavier reads, if that's something you're looking for. And some people call this kind of book a beach read. Might be nice to take on holiday, just to kind of flip through while you're chilling with a sangria or whatever. And also it can act as a good introduction to sci-fi, to people who like thriller kind of works but may be interested in sci-fi. This is a great example to bring people into the genre. For me, for me, it lacks any real depth, with kind of lack of exploration of these great, interesting sci-fi concepts. And that just kind of leads to, for me, huge plot holes, like massive, big plot holes that are just kind of explained away, not really thought of properly. The main character for me, Jason, was extremely one-dimensional and honestly just kind of pretty dull. His only like personality trait is that he loves his wife, really, and that's all he has going for him, and he doesn't really grow or have any depth throughout the story, in my opinion. Now, there are thematic works in this book involving things such as regret at past decisions, importance of family, and what makes a person, what makes you, you. These are all great themes to work with, but all delivered in this kind of fairly on-the-nose fashion, not really being the main point of the book. So, yeah, like I said, my book club was kind of unanimous that this is kind of okay and serves its purpose for what it does, and it is good at what it does. But for me, nothing mind-blowing, nothing that interesting, and I'm kind of done with Blake Crouch's books for now, because I'm not really into this fast-paced thriller. I want something a little bit more deep. So you decide whether you want to read it from this description. It's good, but not mind-blowing to me, but I know a lot of people love it. So that was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Next up, I read The Veiled Throne by Ken Liu, which is book 3 out of 4 of the Dandelion Dynasty series. So I can't really go into any great depth about the story, about the plot, because it could spoil things in the previous books. So in the notes of this book at the back, Liu mentions that books 3 and 4 should be treated as one story, which is kind of wild when you consider the size of this book and the next book being actually even a little bit bigger. So this is one story in total, and it does kind of read rather as like a long build up to a grand conclusion, which you obviously don't get at the end of this book, being the first half, and being 980 pages long. It doesn't really give any kind of catharsis or answers to any questions or any real kind of plot endings or plot pleasure, if you like those kind of answers to, you know, what is going on and what's going to happen. This book is quite slow in its pacing, but that is the same with the previous book, and it's just kind of Ken Liu's style in this series. But if you like the more kind of deliberate, gradual build-up of tension, this will be gripping and interesting to you, as we see a lot of kind of political scheming in a time of kind of a tense peace, and slowly turning that tension screw wonderfully. And it also gradually builds up a lot of character arcs in believable and meaningful ways. Now, Ken Liu is not frightened of killing off characters, so a lot of time he has to bring new characters in and build them up gradually, and he does it really, really well. But there are some that have been there for a long time that he continues to develop, and the character development is slow and deliberate and wonderful and believable. So that has a lot going for it if that's your style of reading. The world in this series is so rich, and that continues in this book. It has a society that feels just really well realized, in my opinion, and it focuses on things such as the importance of technological and educational advancements, often kind of mirroring real world progression that has happened and kind of discussing the moral impact of such progression. So again, something that I find quite interesting and is slow and deliberate. At this point, though, I have one complaint about Ken Liu's style in these books, is that I've noticed a pattern in some of his plot beats. So often there'll be some kind of battle or a set piece of some kind in which the odds look against our protagonists. An innovation is brought in, bringing new possibilities to potentially win for our protagonists. That doesn't ever go to plan. So a further crazy idea is needed, which always miraculously works. And I've seen this just been done quite a few times in these books, and it kind of gets a little bit repetitious and kind of almost predictable, that you know that these kind of plot beats are going to happen. Hopefully the next book will change that, and something will be a little bit more unpredictable. So we also have the quite famous plot scene and plot point in this book of a competition between two restaurants. Now this plot point seems kind of uncharacteristically absurd for Liu and this series. It's kind of silly at times, but it is very fun. And certainly hunger-inducing at times when we get descriptions of really nice tasting food by the sounds of it. And whilst it serves as a fun plot platform for real character growth, which it really does, there is a lot of character growth through this big section. And there is a lot of world building as we go back in time to see things that are affecting the current plot. It did feel just a little bit overly long. I could have done with it being a little bit shorter as it got kind of boring towards the end. But speaking of characters and character development, if you love to hate an antagonist, we are introduced to a new one in this book who is absolutely brilliant in their believability, in their truly brutal and despicable nature. Really super hateable character, but again, you believe that this person could justify their actions and what they're doing. So believable and so hateable, done absolutely wonderful, and excellent villain. Now, where this book comes into its own, as with all of the other books in this series that I've read so far, is the thematic exploration. This is a theme-based book series, and themes such as knowledge as power, the power of stories to shape us, understanding cultural differences or not understanding cultural differences, working with and not against nature, the beauty of art for its own sake, balancing tradition and innovation, and so many more. This is full of thematic work. It is hard to judge this book right now, seeing as it is half of a whole, at least with the intentions of the author, but it was a lovely slow burn. But currently probably my least favorite in the series so far, but I'm still really enjoying it. Definitely not a bad book, not a bad entry, and I am really looking forward to the next book and seeing how this series concludes. So The Veiled Throne for me was good, not the best, and maybe just slightly over long. So my third and final book is another departure from the other two previous different books. And that is Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I'd never read this before, but I recently made the decision to begin delving into more classics, inspired both by beginning studies in English and doing some English literature, but also because I've read so few and I just want to be more widely read. So in my spring term, I read and enjoyed 2 Twain short stories in my degree, and I just wanted to try his long form, having enjoyed those short stories and his style. And I came across a copy of this in a secondhand shop, so it was a no-brainer for me. So what is this about for the 5 of you out there who haven't read it? Now, this is actually a sequel to another book, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, but it does stand on its own. At least I definitely felt that way, and I've heard a lot of other people say that. So ostensibly, this is the story of Huckleberry Finn on the run from an alcoholic and abusive father, along with a man called Jim, who is a runaway slave from the household of Huck's would-be adopted mother. So set in antebellum Southern America, so like 1850s Southern America. So they sailed down the Mississippi on a raft, excuse me, in apparent freedom, though always aware of Jim's fugitive status as a runaway slave, trying to find a way to be able to make ends meet with the aim of eventually traveling north where Jim can be a free man. Now, much hijinks ensue. This is an adventurous book, hence the title, and they deal with all sorts of rapscallions and swindlers and vicious slavers on this kind of very humorous tale of adventure in a pastoral setting of river life on the Mississippi. Now, that's as far as I'll go without spoilers, and I'm sure most people know what happens in this book, having read it before. Now, this book is fast-paced, which isn't normally the case with classics. It has kind of crazy and perhaps quite unlikely scenarios which snake the plot, at every single possible turn. This is no fusty old book about kind of landed gentry, but also rather about kind of down-to-earth people and looking at the antebellum South and the normal people of that time. In terms of prose, this also reads differently to quite a lot of classics, as it is written in a kind of phonetic, vernacular style, which took a little bit of getting used to, but aids to the kind of pastoral feeling of the kind of realness that this book is trying to portray at a lot of times. Now, is this a realism book? It's kind of hard to know for a modern English bloke, like me. I can't really tell if this is what it was really like at that time. But it kind of feels like whilst these events that happen probably wouldn't really have happened, it certainly feels like the spirit of the era is captured in all its kind of grisly glory through the wonderment of an adventurous teenage boy's eyes. So it has a lot going for it in that sense, that it feels like you are there in this time period. There is also kind of a large suspension of disbelief needed, as sometimes the kind of just huge coincidences happen, which you just kind of wouldn't really happen. This is a big country. It's kind of weird to run into that person having all of this stuff happened. So you kind of have to ignore that a little bit and just go along with the fun of the story and read it for what the actual message is trying to tell you. And also the charm of the book and the humor just carries you along and makes you forget about that anyway, because again, it's not the point of the story. Now, does this book stand the test of time? So there are two large pieces of context through which you have to view this book through. I mean, you have to view any book through the context of its time, but especially as you get into older books and you need to kind of know the history around it or whatever, at least something about it. So to modern eyes, there's a very heavy use of the N word in this book, which feels extremely alarming to read to modern sensibilities. But, you have to remember that this is set in pre-Civil War South of America, when slavery is still very much commonplace, so where such words would be in common usage. And it's only appropriate that, the people that are really nasty, the slavers, use these words. They're not going to be using PC words in 1850, Southern America. So you have to take a huge slice of this is set in that time and just realize that Mark Twain wasn't being racist by using this word. It is just what happened at the time. Now, this book is the opposite of racist. The whole point of this story is it is an anti-slavery book. The two characters in these horrible times are the best of friends, and they're trying to free this slave, which is just against all of the laws. Even the white character in this is just like, sod the laws. This is a true man, a real man that deserves his own freedom. And that is what this book is about. So therefore, you cannot call this a racist book by its heavy use of the N-word, because the whole point of the story is that is anti-slavery. I am babbling like nobody's business. So the second piece of kind of context that you need to look through is that this was published after the Civil War in 1885, after slavery was made illegal. But, obviously at these times, the attitudes of the pre-war slavers were still heavily present, and atrocities were still very, very much commonplace. So this book, through Huck Finn's innocent and often naive voice, teaches us to look past the skin color and see the person for who they really are, that they have a family and feelings and emotions and wants of their own, and to treat people with respect, compassion and kindness, no matter who they are. It's a very innocent child seeing people just for them as people, and that is the main message, and that is what Mark Twain wanted, I'm guessing, to portray at this time, where still people were looking at previous slaves as still slaves, but that's not how they really wanted it to be. So therein lies the beauty of what appears on the surface as kind of a romp of a book, an adventurous book. What this really is a wonderful, multifaceted novel that deserves its place in the literary canon. It wasn't kind of an all-timer, didn't like make me overly emotional, but it was really fun, really charming, and has a wonderful message at the center of it. Taken, into context of the time, you can understand why this is such an important book, and I really recommend you give it a go. It's only short, you can sneak this in for sure. So because I take breaks in my recording, I just saw that section was very long, so apologies about that. So let's talk about my June TBR. What am I going to read in June? So I may have given myself a little bit too much to read in June, but I'll try my best to get through them. My June TBR is very much planned. Every book is planned and it's kind of got its schedule, which isn't usually the case with me. I usually have one or two planned and then leave some things open for mood reading, but not the case in June. So let's talk about what I'm reading. So I will be reading, seeing as I have started, The Speaking Bones by Ken Liu, the 4th book in the Dandelion Dynasty. I say I've started it, I've read like 60 pages, maybe not even that. So I really want to finish this series while everything is fresh. Plus, as I mentioned earlier in talking about The Veiled Throne, it's kind of the second half of a story. So I just really want to get that down while, I have a crap memory, so I really want to try and read it while everything is fresh. Now this is over 1,000 pages, like 1,050 pages, so that is already a lot of reading in just one book. So the next one I will read is God Killer by Hannah Kaner. So as I mentioned, I have a book club, and this is June's pick for my book club before we have kind of a summer break to enjoy the summer as much as we can. Now, I don't really know much about this book. I don't know what it's about or anything like that, but I've seen a couple of YouTubers say some good things about it. So hopefully it has enough to talk about for our book club. And it's fairly short. It's like 350 pages or something, which I'm very grateful for. So that one is definitely going to get read as I talk about it with my book club towards the end of June or middle, something like that. The third book I am definitely going to read is Anathem by Neil Stevenson, as this is a buddy read with my good friends Whitney and Bart. This will be my first Neil Stevenson, so I'm very much looking forward to reading some of this very famous sci-fi author's works. It is supposed to be quite a dense and difficult book, and it is another big one. It's like 950 pages long or something on Goodreads. So this is why I'm kind of a little bit nervous, because I have two kind of 1,000 page books and another one to sneak in the middle. So yeah, they're big. And I'm gonna have to do a lot of overlapping with the reading and like manage my time quite well to make this all fit in with the time schedules. But those are the 3 definite books I will be reading in June. Towards the end of the month, I'm gonna try and read some of Ursula K. Le Guin's short stories, just here and there in between the big dense reads when I have a little bit of time. But that will be definitely towards the end of the month, so hopefully I can talk about 2 or 3 or 4 of those in my next wrap up. But that is all I have planned for June, and I think that will be enough. So that's it for today's video. If you've made it this far into the video, I thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. So that was my month. Let me know if you've read any of these books that I've talked about today, whether it be the ones that I've read or the ones I'm going to read. Let me know anything interesting you've read in May or anything you're excited about in June. If you liked the video, please press the like button. Have a conversation with me in the comments. If you're new to the channel, please think about subscribing and joining my journey here on YouTube. But that is it for now, so I'll see you in another video soon. Goodbye.